Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We have got a special call-in tonight, an additional meeting on the agenda, and we have members of the public to hear from, we have ward members to hear from, so without further ado, we'll move on through the agenda, I think. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Cook, who is being represented by Councillor Myton, Councillor Doe, we have Councillor Barrett in his place, Councillor Fern represented by Councillor Perfect, and Councillor Jones for Councillor Hamilton. And we also have apologies from Adam Bryan, our Director of Place. Are there any other apologies I haven't mentioned? Excellent. Moving on to item 2, record of the meeting on the 17th of August 2023. Can I sign that record of the meeting as being correct? Agreed? Thank you. Urgent matters, point 3, I'm not aware of any urgent matters. So point 4, declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests and other significant interests. Are there any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? Are there any declarations of whipping? Excellent. Now we move on to the substantive. Now this is on to pages 15 to 56 of your report pack, and the call-in, which is a mechanism which is open to councillors on cabinet decisions, is going to be introduced by Councillor Filmer. If you want to take the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, we've called this in because we're not totally against the Street Works Acts that we're looking at doing. Obviously, we welcome the school routes, school streets and things like that. The reason we called it in was because of the engagement that's been with the residents of Rainham, and it's obvious from the information they've put back, it's not welcome in Rainham. So on that basis, unfortunately, it all has to come back in, but we weren't looking to call in all the red routes. It was just the fact that we feel that residents and the businesses in Rainham are very against this, with a 60% saying against it. So we thought it was only right that this gets called in.
Thank you. Now we're going to hear from ward member Councillor Hackwell, and we're also going to hear from a resident representative. But first up, Councillor Hackwell. And just to clarify, that these speakers have been limited to 5 minutes each. Thank you.
Well, firstly, let me thank you all for coming to this special meeting of the Regeneration, Culture, Environment and Overview Scrutiny Committee. I know you probably had better things to do on a Wednesday evening, but here we are. I'm here tonight not only representing my ward, but all the 3 wards that the Rainham Red Route scheme passes through, and the 8 ward councillors that represent that ward. I specifically want to talk about the proposal for Rainham High Street and why it should not be considered for further consultation / implementation going forwards. In the initial round of consultation, over 60% of those that responded that were included in the data analysis, which only included residents within 1 kilometre of the A2, even though many more responded, were against the idea for Rainham High Street. Another meeting at the local church in Rainham that Councillor Curry attended, which attracted almost 40 people made up of local businesses, councillors, environmentalists and residents. When the discussion concluded, there was a unanimous vote about the implementation of the red route in Rainham. The proposed red route in Rainham is already subject to double yellow lines, which should prevent illegally parked cars, but also allow for loading according to our own enforcement policy, unlike red routes. The difference for the red routes is that they can be enforced by CCTV rather than traffic enforcement officer, which will potentially generate more revenue for the council. I've lived in Rainham for over 60 years, and over that time, of course, the traffic along Rainham High Street has become worse. But this is not as a result of illegally parked cars. It's more due to an increase of vehicles as the population has increased, and this is exacerbated due to poor traffic management. And this is also compounded when roadworks shut the Lower Rainham Road, or there are motorway or junction closures, which seem to have been ever present over the last year. The stated aim of red routes is to prevent illegally parked cars, which in turn cuts congestion, increases traffic flow, making journeys more reliable and cleaner. Along the proposed red route, which is about 1 kilometre in length, there is a mini roundabout, 3 bus stops on both sides of the road, together with 5 sets of traffic lights, each with their own pedestrian-controlled crossings. The shortest distance between the 2 sets of traffic lights is a mere 60 metres, which is followed by another set only 130 metres away. The traffic flow will not be increased along this route all the time these traffic management constraints are in place. One of the main issues that causes traffic congestion is the junction of Mears Court Road and the A2, which holds up traffic in both directions for considerable amounts of time. Since I was elected as a councillor in 2019, I've been constantly asking for improvements to this junction and now suspended quarterly meetings with Ruth and her team. We suggested purchasing the 4 cottages at the bottom of Mears Court Road and redesigning the junction completely, diverting the footpath through the United Services Club. These are just a couple of the more feasible suggestions. The last update we received of progress of this design scheme was back in March of this year, when we were informed that the exploratory work had been undertaken to confirm where the underground services actually are. The council were awarded £175,000 in S106 payments back in 2017 to improve this junction, and there's possibly been more S106 payments since this time. We need to fix this junction and review the other traffic management systems along this stretch of road before we implement any more supposed traffic management schemes to ease the congestion in the high street. So why is Rainham any different from the other proposed red routes? Well, one, it's not a dual carriageway, most of the others are. It's already one of the 2 roads in Rainham designated as a zero tolerance area for parking. It contains many businesses operating directly along the route that require access for loading. Has many residential addresses, some with driveways directly onto the red route. For example, how will delivery drivers like Amazon or DPD, etc., and tradesmen make calls or deliveries, such as citing a skip to these addresses? Put quite simply, Rainham is considerably different to the other proposed red routes. And the problems with congestion in Rainham is not due to illegally parked cars, as the road is wide enough for vehicles to be 3 abreast without causing problems for most of the proposed length. The only reason red routes are being proposed is for potential income generation from increased fines due to the law at the moment, which allows fines to be issued by CCTV enforcement rather than an enforcement officer that is required for double yellow lines. This may well change if the recent rulings in London are anything to go by. The latest guidance from the Department of Transport says that approved devices, primarily automatic number plate recognition CCTV cameras, are only used where enforcement is difficult or sensitive and enforced by a civil enforcement officer is not practical, which is not the case in Rainham High Street. In summary, there is no substantial evidence of illegal parking on Rainham High Street. Traffic flow is not restricted by illegally parked cars. Rainham High Street is very different in makeup, with residential properties and many small businesses operating along its length than the other proposals. Better traffic management is the key to increasing traffic flow along the High Street. So please consider if the major capital investment to install and revenue costs to maintain and provide the system in Rainham will actually reap any dividends and pay for itself even in the long term. When deciding on the course of action this evening, please reflect on the points you have heard and are yet to hear and make the right decision. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Hackwell. And next up, we have Alan Stockey, who is a resident representative, and I understand that Mr. Stockey has a handout that he would like to be distributed to members tonight. We'll wait for everyone to have the handout distributed, and then we'll kick off. Okay, Mr. Stockey, in your own time.
It's gone off. That's better. I'm a father and grandfather with close family living in Rainham. In my professional life, I worked in both finance and public sector senior roles in operations and programme delivery with a focus on risk management. Now retired, I'm a member of the Rainham Eco Hub, Pride in Medway Community Champion winners in 2022, and I'm a passionate clean air campaigner, recently helping coordinate residential and secondary school engagement in the Council's DEFRA-funded Rainham Anti-Idling project, and I'm here to speak against the Red Route proposal, both for Rainham and more generally. Okay, thank you. I was encouraged at the first full council meeting of this new administration when it pledged to restore hope and be led by data. It is also encouraging that no one at this meeting has declared the whip and there is a free vote. We all want good value for money, especially when a scheme costs £805,000, 2.5 times the average price of a house in Medway. Delivering something that gives Medway residents life-enhancing benefits at a time of financial constraint could actually bring hope. I'd like to thank the officers for the proposal, which brings much-needed focus to reducing congestion and improving the awful air quality in Medway. But I remain confused and disappointed that I could see any specific examples of air quality improvement. No specific reductions in nitrogen dioxide, particle pollution or CO2 emissions are detailed, but they're all alluded to. No clear improvements in traffic flow or increased uptake of active travel. No reduction in emergency admittances to hospital for asthma or inhaler dependency. £805,000 being spent, but I could find no discernible improvements, and a risk assessment with no reference to vandalism of cameras or risk of legal action for disproportionate use of CCTV. I challenge whether objective targets have actually been reviewed. Having spent time walking all 5 routes, I'm confused by their selection. Best Street, which has a sheer embankment and railings for most of its length. Why would anyone want to stop there other than in an emergency? And only 3 penalty charge notices issued last year in total. There are no publicly available reports detailing the benefits of red routes. I've looked and asked experts. None. But there are contraindicators for increased road traffic accidents. Concerns prompted submission of FOI requests, hoping that even if the detail was not in the report, that critical information has been gathered and analysed. Except in response, I'm told that key information on existing traffic flow rates and any modelled improvements are not available. Also, there is no modelling of air quality improvements. The Council's plan states that it will be working with the public and partners to enhance and protect Medway's high-quality public realm and street scene. That should mean Highways have spoken to their own colleagues in public health, climate change and active travel. Again, nothing states that this cross-department consultation and integrated working, but yesterday I was invited to meet the team, which I welcome. All the proposed red routes in Rainham align with air quality management areas in central Medway and Rainham. Worryingly, poor air quality in these areas is covered by statutory duties, but nothing to suggest technical consultation has occurred with the Council's own environmental protection team. Rainham residents have made clear they don't want a red route through their town. It's aggressive and disproportionate when existing enforcement measures are far from being exhausted. Route 5 embraces the Rainham AQMA, but it's atypical of the proposed red routes, which are all dual carriageway, importantly with lay-bys for all bus stops and filter lanes for all right turns. They are not community assets punctuated with a 13th century church, healthy living centre, over 40 businesses and more residences than all the other planned routes combined. So as well as concerns about unavailable data and lack of integrated working, I'm now concerned that money on cameras and red paint will have a minimal impact on the stated areas of improvement. The proposal focuses on inconsiderate parking and stopping without reference to other factors present in Rainham which don't impact upon the other proposed routes. This is acknowledged in the report but then ignored. I didn't. I undertook my own survey with over 360 responses you have in front of you, and 7 factors rank more highly, but nothing is currently proposed to address any of them. The closure of Lower Rainham Road ranks highest, closed at least 10 times this year already, and closed again next week. Second is roadworks, and highways already have this data. A growing school, the academy, many new houses with associated construction traffic, and regular closures of Junction 5 of the A249, all increasing A2 traffic volume. Locals know you don't travel by car close to school start or end or when people are commuting unless you absolutely have to. The transport strategy for the South East predicts congestion will get worse, but doesn't reference red routes. Let's hope the new local plan actually delivers the promised new and improved roads. Inconsiderate parking is most common outside takeaways and salons, all on the north side of Rainham High Street. All those establishments are closed when the morning peaks occur, and the road is wide enough for traffic and emergency vehicles to pass. Congestion in Rainham could be reduced. Another example, move the bus stop outside the White Horse 100 metres east, where there is a lay-by. This would improve air quality outside the Healthy Living Centre and remove a pinch point caused by waiting buses by the traffic lights. Wider uncertainties in the report could be reduced by conducting a red route pilot, measuring improvement and validating assumptions. Only please don't pick Rainham for the pilot when there are four other routes that appear more viable. Finally, please remember your vote this evening should be about 2 red lines and not 3, and reject the proposal to move forward to statutory consultation and send it back to Cabinet for a rethink. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stockey. We now move on to a section of the meeting where I think it would be helpful if we had some input from officers just to set out the rationale for where we are and how we got here and where we go next. So first up, I think we'll go for Ruth.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set some context, really, around the Safer, Healthier Streets programme. The Red Routes is part of that programme, along with, as Councillor Filmer mentioned, the school streets and also the moving traffic. So there are, as I say, there's several projects. The improvements in terms of all of the Safer, Healthier Streets, it's mainly to improve our highway network. So it's to make it safer, improve the road safety, to reduce indiscriminate parking, reduce congestion, improve air quality, and improve our journey times, and that's particularly important for public transport. On the 5th of September 2023, Cabinet were presented with a report, and that was around the engagement that had been carried out for red routes. That report was, agreement was given for that report to go forward in terms of a statutory consultation, not for implementation, I would note. What's really important is the engagement exercise that took place. The feedback from that will be put into the designs when we go on to the next stage, which is statutory consultation. So that was the important stuff that was in this report that was agreed by Cabinet. However, that was called in, and that's why we're here tonight to discuss that. So red routes, put simply, a red route is very similar to a yellow route, a double yellow line or a single yellow line, but a red route can be enforced by ANPR cameras, and that is the difference. Yellow lines can only be enforced by somebody on foot, and obviously then you have the implications of you have staffing to do that who have to be there at particular times. As you can imagine, the effectiveness of doing enforcement by cameras is far greater than having somebody who might be there at a particular time. Safer, healthier streets, red routes in particular, meet all of our key strategic priorities. So that is the council plan, the local transport plan, and the air quality plan as well. I think people have already spoken tonight, have actually made mention of this, but we have seen a significant population growth in Medway. This has resulted in congestion on our roads and also difficulties with our public transport, which is really important that we actually work with the local buses so that we can make things easier for them. We're having lots of meetings, my service, with Arriva and other bus companies, and only last week when we spoke to the representative from Arriva, he made it very clear to us that red routes are really important for the bus service to improve. And I think we need to bear that in mind. So if the Arriva buses are saying that's one of the issues, and that's Rainham and the other routes as well, then I would urge you to bear that in mind. We're seeing vehicles, the amount of vehicles through modelling will be going up by 27% by 2026. So although we would all dearly love to see the use of vehicles come down because we are looking at reductions in carbon, that's not what our modelling is showing us. And that's mainly because we are seeing an increase on the amount of people who are living in Medway but also using our roads. So that's going to see the average journey times of the peak hours are very likely to increase. So red routes will be future-proofing our roads. It's only going to get worse if we don't take some action now. And I think it's really important that we pick up on red routes is just one of the tools in our toolbox. There are lots of other things that we are doing and that we can do, and I'd be very happy to work with members and with members of the public to tell us there are suggestions of things we can do, and we will look to try and do them and to investigate them. We need to reduce congestion, we need to improve traffic flow. They are the key things for us if we want to improve getting around Medway. So depending on the outcome of tonight, to give you the next steps, we will go to statutory consultation if that is approved. The designs that will go out to statutory consultation are a direct reflection of the engagement that we did with residents on all of the routes. So, for example, Rainham, which we're talking about tonight, the businesses that we spoke to and who engaged with us asked for loading bays, and that's been designed in. So when we go to statutory consultation, it will be very clear that this is what you asked for and this is what we've put in. And also, of course, the response that we get to that statutory consultation may give other indications of things that people would like to see that they think will help along Rainham and along the other routes as well. So that will all be taken into account. The very key thing is here, we need this to work for Medway. It's not something that is a measure that we're putting in because we think it's just a great thing to do. We will be able to monitor the air quality, and I think we will be seeing improvements on the air quality. If you think about now, we have double yellow lines on this stretch of road, so we do enforce it now. However, if there are cameras, that's going to be a deterrent for people. So we may not see, a whole host of people, and there is a 6-month grace period, actually, when you put something like this in. So the key thing here is the deterrent aspect. So people are less likely to stop, as they will do now, on a double yellow line, hold up the traffic, hold up the buses, pop into a shop for 5 or 10 minutes, and then pop back again, because they know that they're going to get caught on camera. And that's really how red routes work, more so than the double yellow lines or single yellow lines, where it's reliant on a civil enforcement officer actually seeing it happen at the time. So, to finish off, and just to reiterate, the next stage is to start statutory consultation. The next stage is not to implement red routes. It is to carry out a statutory consultation exercise. We're not at that stage. We have done engagement, and the engagement that we did was to get people's views, to get their input, to understand what their thoughts were around putting red routes in as opposed to double yellow lines. So I just wanted to make that absolutely clear. After that, we reach another decision point. And at that point, it will be based on what do people think at statutory consultation? Were we able to allay their fears, to look at the design, or was there things that we've already dealt with, which is likely to come out of statutory as well? So members and residents tonight, happy to take part in the debate, to answer questions. I do have my colleagues with me here who are working on the project along with me. So between us, I'm sure if there are things you'd like clarified or you'd like to dig into a little bit further, we will certainly try and help you with that tonight. Thank you very much.
Okay, and are we going to hear from you, Alex? Or are we moving?
We'll move, if it's okay, we'll move on and then
Yep,
comments will take.
absolutely. So, yeah, I think that was a pretty extensive report from Ruth setting out the position where we are. We've also obviously heard from a member of the public. I'll just remind members that we're not here to cross-examine the member of the public who's taken the time to come here tonight. So they've had their say, so I would suggest that any sort of further clarification is sought from the officers present, who hopefully will be able to answer questions around some of the points raised by Mr Stockey if you need clarification of those. On that basis, I'll take any member. Councillor Perfect.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to move that over a little bit there. Thank you. And thank you, first of all, I think both to Councillor Hackwell and also to Alan. Alan has done and is doing so much for the community of Rainham, and he's a very much respected voice within the community, and I know he often holds me to account, so very much pleased to see him here on behalf of the residents talking about those concerns. And it's those concerns that I'll talk to now, I think, because certainly myself, I know colleagues within Rainham and the Member of Parliament, Raymond Chishti, have all received hundreds of emails from members of the public. We held a community consultation event at St Margaret's, which was chaired by Nathan Ward, very well-respected community figure that Alan referenced, and Gary also, Councillor Hackwell, referenced, who were concerned about the proposals, and I share those concerns as well. I think we need, and I would urge, certainly members of the committee, that we need to approach this certainly with an outside view. I think there has been, certainly so far, a lot of predetermining going on by members of the executive, by members of the cabinet during cabinet meetings, and I've got to say I'm not impressed. When you go out for a consultation, the first thing you do is go out to the public and ask them their views. And then once you get those views, you listen to those views and you consider them. And obviously we're here tonight as part of the call-in process because we are concerned about the proposals. It is not appropriate for cabinet members to be predetermining conversations before we've even got to the main consultation process, describing members of the community as scaremongering, describing other elected officials as scaremongering, totally unacceptable. Repeated by the deputy leader in a cabinet meeting, saying things are for the birds, and it really is just not impressive, I've got to say, and it's very disappointing that has been going on, attacking members of the community and members of the public and other members, elected members in Rainham, and the Member of Parliament, totally unnecessarily. So I just place that on record, and I am concerned that predetermining means that the effective consultation process becomes pointless. If you've got members of the cabinet already saying that they're scaremongering and we're going to press ahead with it and all of this kind of stuff, not impressive. So I've got a number of questions which I'm hoping officers will be able to answer. Quite a few here, hopefully we can answer. So the first one is just around how many parking tickets have been issued along the proposed red route yellow line for the yellow line offences over the past 12 months? I appreciate some of these questions, you might need to take on notice kind of thing. Second one is, how many fines are we going to need to issue in order to recoup the cost of this system? And what's the ongoing cost of running the system? Then how many responses from the initial consultation have been discarded due to, as Councillor Hackwell referenced, those being away from the 1 to 2 mile radius, given the fact that this impacts people from across Rainham and Gillingham? Was there any consultation with local environmental groups or local clean air groups on this matter? Why were ward councillors not properly briefed on the proposal? Why were there not active conversations on this during the consultation period? Why were there no public consultation exhibition events held? On what basis will this reduce air quality, and what scientific basis are officers using behind this? And just finally, is this consultation not completely pointless? Now we've got the portfolio holder already predetermining the next phase. I appreciate officers probably won't be able to answer that because it's a political question, but I guess it's a rhetorical question for the committee. Thank you, Chair.
Ruth?
We're going to do this on a panel approach, if that's okay, because we've all got our little specialisms. Alex, do you want to take some first, or Nick? Who wants to come in first on some of these questions?
Thanks, Ruth. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. If I may just touch on the contraventions that you mentioned in the questions. Between the period of April 23 and September 23, there was a total number of 26 PCNs issued. Would you like me to break that down? So parked in restricted streets, i.e. the double yellow lines, there was 13. Parked for longer than the permitted limited wait was 9. Parked in a designated disabled person's parking place without displaying a valid disabled badge, there was 2, and stopped on a restricted bus stop or stand, there was 2. I have to say, though, that this is not a true reflection on what happens there between the 24-hour restrictions, and it's predicated on, having officers available at that time. And, when officers are there and visible, you do start to see people stop and then set off again, which does add to the congestion, the idling, etc. So, although the numbers are low, it's because it's a resource issue as well, that we cannot have officers there spread out along the 1 kilometre for 24 hours. And if I may, Chair, pass on to my colleague Nick for the air quality issue.
Thanks, Alex. Hi, my name's Nick, and I work for Marston, who will be providing the camera systems and the air quality monitoring systems for the programme that's been set out. To answer the air pollution question, and Mr. Stockey is correct in that there isn't any real evidence to show that red routes reduce pollution. That's because, generally speaking, red routes aren't put in as a pollution reduction tool. They're generally done for smoothing traffic. And the pollution reduction is a function of that smoothing traffic. There is lots of evidence around the way in which vehicles create pollution in a stop-start environment. So smoother traffic generally produces less pollution from the brakes, from the engine, from the exhaust pipe than stop-start traffic. So there is evidence that we use in the industry to show that smoother traffic, which is one of the outcomes of the scheme, produces less pollution than stop-start traffic when cars are accelerating and braking and idling as well when they're stopped on a red route.
Hi, yeah, thanks for the questions, Councillor. Just from my point of view, in regards to the consultation and in the report, so although in the actual Cabinet report, in the piece there, it does go in and break down the results in terms of looking at what people said that were close to the red routes, which are used then more on a frequent basis. But if you look at Appendix A, we've provided the full range of the questions and then the breakdown. So you have got everybody who has responded to that is in there in parts of it. And it's not, as the engagement was done, it was about not just saying whether they wanted it, it's actually trying to get some feedback into the reasons why. Hence why if you look at that, there's a number of questions around what experience they've had on them different routes. As part of it. So all the answers are in there in terms of that, but it was just in the main report, it was just looking at those that were closest to the red routes as part of it.
Thank you. If I could just come back as well, just to pick up the other areas. So one of your questions, Councillor Perfect, was how long will it take to recoup the costs? So there was an original business case done, as you would have expected, which was that was done around about December last year, from recollection, which gave some indicative costs. However, I think what we need to be very clear about is this is not about recouping costs. And at this stage, we're not assuming that this is going to go ahead. So it's very difficult at the moment. You don't know how many people after the 6-month grace period are actually going to end up stopping on the red route and getting fined. So that's not something I can give you an answer for, to be honest with you. As we venture on, if we get that far, then certainly we will be doing some monitoring and we will be able to tell how successful it is. All of the income that comes in will obviously be reinvested into the highway. That's really important as well. And there is an upkeep here, of course there is, but that will all be part of the journey as we go on, pardon the pun, part of the journey as we go on with all of Safer, Healthier Streets, in actual fact. In terms of the consultation with the ward councillors, I think our consultation was quite good, actually. I think we didn't necessarily have meetings directly with ward councillors, but we did write to all councillors across the board and let them know all about safer healthier streets, also about the engagement as they were going on. Obviously, we'd like to continue with that when we get to the statutory stage as well. Yeah, I think, has that answered all of your questions there? Was there anything we haven't covered?
No, I think that's covered the point. So I just guess from your perspective, I mean, what is the overarching, from a policy perspective, that you're recommending to the Cabinet? What is the main reason for why we're doing this? Because obviously we're now saying it's not air quality, even though the portfolio holder's been saying it is air quality. Back to that one. We've then got, it's not a revenue generator, but statistics show it probably will be. I mean, I'm just unclear as to what the overarching reason is why we're doing this when the public are saying that they don't want it and the people of Rainham are saying they don't want it. But I appreciate it's also a political decision, so I'm not, I'm only expecting you to sort of, the advice you've been giving, I guess. Thank you.
This is all about reducing congestion and improving road safety and stopping indiscriminate parking. That's what's really clear, and that's what's in the local transport plan as well. That's what's really important here. Of course, and as Nick has outlined for us, there will be other advantages as well, one of which will be less idling, smoother journeys, and therefore, hopefully, more people on buses, so less cars being used, and therefore the air quality is also going to improve. And that's something that we intend to be able to monitor as well and make sure that's the case. But, they're the kind of the obvious things, obviously. I think that probably covers it, yeah?
Yeah, no, it's appreciated. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perfect. I would just also add, I mean, the red routes were being consulted on in my ward as well, and obviously it was communicated to ward members. Perhaps after 5 years and more, my expectations are slightly lower in terms of just how much engagement there is with individual ward members on these things, but it was something that I was able to share with my constituents on social media and encourage them to participate. I think that perhaps officers will take on board the need to just ensure that ward members are fully engaged on these things at an early stage. Councillor Peake.
the answers, I've got the answer already, so thank you. It was a point of clarification, but it's in the report. Thank you.
Okay. Any other member? Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, thank you. Last week, I visited a number of businesses along the A2 Rainham High Street to inquire as to the viability of the proposed red route. Bearing in mind the recent poll, 60% were against it in the Rainham area. With this in mind, I contacted Lucas, quite a prominent member in the Rainham, where the red route was going to be placed, but regrettably he was unable to attend because he had a prior engagement today. And my next thought was to see John Weir, our local undertaker, I think that's the word you use for them. And he was very sort of forthcoming relating to it. And regrettably, he's visiting somebody, family member, you know, well out of the area today. But I do have a written statement for him. Can I read that out?
By all means, you've got the floor.
Thank you. Further to our conversation, I would like to express my misgivings in respect to the red routes on the A2 through Rainham and set out in the same below. We often carry out funeral services at St Margaret's Church, Rainham. In order to convey the coffin into the church, the funeral cortege parks in the High Street adjacent to the church path. The coffin is then carried into the church, followed by the mourners. Following the service, the process is reversed. The alternative access to the church would be via the public car park, Orchard Street. However, this presents funeral directors with the two immediate issues in that the entrance to the exit to the car park locked height restriction barriers under the respective the motor hearse and the floral tributes on the roof of the house would not be able to pass under respective barriers. The second issue is the stopping point close to the churchyard entrance gate. For a cortege to stop anywhere close to the gate would cause serious access issues for other car park users, and he cannot imagine the indignity for a coffin to be carried any distance through a public car park in order to gain access to the church via the gate already mentioned. In terms of overall proposal for a red route through Rainham, as pointed out by the response of the consultant, the issue is not simply about improving air quality through the high street by preventing parking. The route causes traffic congestion in the junction of the high street, Mears Court Road, in that vehicles wishing to turn right from the high street into Mears Court often get blocked with the traffic in the opposite direction, continuing along the A2 to Sittingbourne. Until this long-standing issue is resolved, the problem will remain. We've obviously heard, Councillor Hackwell, refer to this matter. Finally, I learned with surprise that the council have let it be known they face financial crisis as to the part costing of the measures will not fund any Christmas lights. We know that this is different now, but this is the time that this was printed. Costing, £75,000. This, to me, is extraordinary that they, at the same time as the council proposed to spend £800,000, and in my opinion, it could even be higher than that at the time that you actually get round to doing it, should it go through, on the creation of the red routes, despite the results of the public consultation.
Councillor Barrett, I'm being quite indulgent here, but that sounds to me like not only a bit of political speech making in what's meant to be a scrutiny committee, but I mean, on a basic level, and I have all respect for members of the public who don't fully understand. If you just let me finish. Full respect for members of the public who don't understand the budget, but you don't have that same excuse, Councillor Barrett. Those are two completely different budgets. So I accept that you are reading out someone else's words, but you're doing that either in full knowledge that we're we're misrepresenting things, or you don't understand the difference. I don't know which it is.
Don't understand the difference. So, well, I'll finish on that. There's further, reference on here, but can I continue on my own observations?
Absolutely.
Thank you. There we go. I also consulted a number of other local businesses over the matter, and the sort of responses I had got, which would cause problems to them. There was a Thomas Mudge from the Greedy Banker. That was the place used to be the bank on the corner of Station Road and the High Street. It would present problems with deliveries and waste collection, because obviously that's one side of the road. He's got no real access to dispose of it in the other way. So I then proceeded to the National Westminster Bank, and they weren't too concerned one way or the other, as you'd expect from bankers. But when I sort of indicated to them, perhaps when their collection and delivery of cash was being dealt with, would they park in the car park and wheel it through? And then they thought, well, no, we would rather not have this sort of red route, when you sort of made a sort of a explanation that could cause them problems. The betting shop, a place I never normally go to, they had concerns about window cleaning, because they have a service from a window cleaner that has the water on the transport and the cleans the windows that way, as well as machine replacements, which are very heavy and need to be transported from time to time. The cost of coffee, milk delivery, nutmegs, waste collection and deliveries, Pizza Hut deliveries, floral times, deliveries, parking, own vehicle on forecourt and customer parking on forecourt, Patrick Duff, forecourt parking and deliveries, kitchen halt, rubbish collection, deliveries, customer access. John Weir, I've already mentioned, part of the problems. And finally, I started my own carpet business, carpet line at 39 High Street, Rainham, which is in this area.
Other carpet shops are available, I assume, yes.
Yes, of course. I'm glad you sort of grasped the point. That is the whole point. But I'm no longer there, so it's not as an interest, as I thought you might have been interrupting. Anyhow, I had my own carpet business there at 39 High Street, Rainham, started in 1989, and I had not expanded to a larger premises, which I now own in Gillingham. I could be sort of faced with serious problems by sort of having the premises in that area. For example, deliveries, which I could have only at that time taken in through the front door. I don't think it would be many times that the enforcement of a ticket that it wouldn't be long before my account was closed with most of my suppliers, and that way I would have no means of selling the carpets, which would be a bit of a nuisance. I was leasing the shop, which I would still have to pay the quarterly rent to the landlord, despite the business being available, because I'm referring that other businesses could be in the same situation as I could have been. That's why I'm bringing this to your attention. And perhaps it might have been a result. I might have to sell my house to pay these dues that are required, which isn't good. And then one wonders what next. So thinking on this decision will put many in the situation, not just Rainham, but the whole of the Medway, put through the consequences of this decision implemented with this red route. I would feel guilty of any dire consequences of going ahead with this proposal. However, I've tried my best to prevent it and only hope common sense prevails.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. So, I mean, I think what that, in summary, obviously there's a few specific cases mentioned there, and if people look at page 18 of the report, 4.9, it talks about, in the third bullet point, potential site-specific exemptions have been identified and these will be finalised. So I think what we really need is clarification of those, but specifically the standouts for me are obviously the funeral directors, the window cleaners who conduct their business and require that front access, and also, as Councillor Barrett says, shops which can only take specific deliveries by the front. So maybe you could illuminate that.
Thank you,
Can
Chair.
I just say, why should there be exemptions for specific people like funeral directors? Clearly, he's made it quite clear the inconvenience, but, it's an inconvenience to everybody, not just to specific people.
Okay, Ruth.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the first thing just to point out is these are already double yellow lines that are there. So if people are stopping there now, there is the risk that they will already get a fine for this. So this is just a different way of enforcing. I appreciate it's a more effective way of enforcing, but if you come back to what I said about being a deterrent, that's exactly how this works. Now, I'll pick up on the points that you've raised. So, number one, we would never, ever give a fine to a funeral. That would never happen now. It will never happen in the future. That's just not going to happen. So what happens is when the cameras, the way it works is when the cameras pick up that there has been a vehicle that's stopped, there is then a human who actually looks at it and says, oh, we're not doing that because it's a hearse and there's a coffin in it. However, what I would say to you is the funeral directors who use that church all have a key and they can open up the barrier and get in, and that's what they do now in the majority of cases. So I don't think that is an issue, but remember, we would not, that's not something that would happen. We would never give a fine. If I could just pick up on Mears Court, the point that was made again. So this is an ongoing project that we're working on. We have been working on it for a while. We've done a detailed design. We've actually done our trial holes. Now, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not going to go into the details of how you make changes to the highway necessarily, but it's still ongoing. And I'll be more than happy to get an update for Rainham members as to where we are with that detailed design. There is Section 106 money from the developer. That's still there, so that will happen. Okay, so that we do take that into account. And I guess what's important is to come back on the fact that this is not an isolated thing that we're doing here. Red Routes is not just an isolated thing in Rainham or any of the other areas. We are constantly in frontline services looking at the different interventions we can make to make it safer, to help with congestion, to deal with roadworks. And that's our bread and butter, basically. So we know it's a problem, and this is just one of the tools that we're using. You mentioned Luckhursts as well, the furniture company. We have been talking to them. We talked to them as part of the engagement, and actually we are putting in a loading bay to the front of Luckhurst, which they do know about. And that won't only be Luckhurst who can use that, other places around. So, if there's businesses that are in that vicinity. And there are 3 new loading bays that are going in that vicinity. I think what's really important is if we get to the stage where we're doing statutory consultation, we want to encourage people, businesses and residents to say, this is a problem for me because. So all of the examples you've given, like, Costa Coffee and those sorts of places, they need to talk to us. They need to take part in the consultation and they need to suggest to us what would help and why they've got a problem. and we will look into that. We absolutely will. Now, of course, we have to limit the amount of loading bays, otherwise there's going to be absolutely no point, putting any restrictions in there if everyone's got their own loading bay. However, we have done a lot of work with all of the businesses along Rainham and the other routes as well, speaking to them, and some of them actually do have a rear entrance that they can use. It's actually a little bit easier for them for their delivery to happen out the front, but that is holding up the traffic. It might not be that they're getting tickets at the moment because it might be early in the morning, or it might be a time where we haven't got a civil enforcement officer there. But that is when buses are taking people to work and to the hospital and to schools. And that's the bit that's being missed at the moment, and that's what Red Routes will put right. So there's a middle ground for us here. We want to get it right. We want to get the amount of loading bays and the time for those loading bays corrected. If people are having deliveries and they actually live directly on a red route, there's going to be exceptions for that as well. We're not going to give a fine to Tesco's because they're doing somebody's food delivery necessarily. We know people have got to live. We know people have got their own drives, and they're going to be reversing onto those drives when they get home from work at night. This is all part of the process. It's not going to be, they're there, we're giving them a ticket. That isn't how it works. And we'd be silly to do that, to be honest with you. We've got to make this work for the residents, for the businesses, but also we've got to try and meet the aim of reducing congestion and making it easier for people to travel around Medway, and particularly public transport. I think I might have answered everything there. Anything colleagues want to come in on? Alex, do you want to? You put your finger on there?
If I may, Chair. Thank you, Ruth. I think Ruth has covered near enough everything, Councillor, but I think it's also important to mention during the consultation or engagement, we visited 41 businesses and had quite a good dialogue there. And of the 202 responses we received around the 1 kilometre catchment area, there was literally like 117 times the theme of loading and unloading, which was concerning to the businesses. And therefore, we made the decision to look at redesigning, which meant taking out central hatching to create that space to put loading in. And, when we go away today, we'll still look at that to see if we can maximise as many loading bays where we can feasibly do. And we'll do that during the statutory consultation.
Regards to the loading bays...
Sorry. Go on then, Councillor Barrett, but make it very brief, please.
Yeah, I will do. Regarding the loading bays, perhaps, one might be already full up with a couple of vehicles. The vehicles aren't keep going around in circles, hoping that they'll be able to get a space in one of these bays. And as regards the loading bay for the Lucas, perhaps that's why he's not here today to speak on behalf of the traders. As you know, there's a bay being provided for him. And regards quickly with the undertakers, with respect to the keys, it will still present a problem that he had already mentioned, that he would be sort of blocking the route through the car park unless he was sort of parked in the car park and carrying the coffin, above the vehicles.
Okay. I don't know if you want to come back. I mean, I thought it was pretty unequivocal that there is no circumstance under which funeral directors would be penalised by this new system. So unless you get something to add, I think that's been covered. Yeah.
But the...
Sorry, Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'll be a little bit more concise, hopefully. First of all, I'd like to thank the Ward Councillor and the residents for their information coming forward this evening, and also like to thank the officers for their responses. So that's answered 95% of my questions already. Primarily, I'm now looking at what was stated by the Ward Councillor in terms of the road widths of the majority of that area along there, stating very clearly that traffic could pass, whether it's a bus or a lorry or a car, quite easily, and therefore finding the odd van unloading not to be too much of a problem. But that's also been clarified by Ruth. The other issue that I really have is from Nicholas, or we were talking about air pollution and also assisting public transport. But let's be honest here, public transport buses are the worst offenders ever in Medway. You cannot go anywhere without sitting behind a bus and winding up your window and wishing you could hold your breath for another 40 seconds till it disappears. So part of this process, I think, should be not just in terms of aiding traffic movement, and as you said, congestion and pollution, but also take into account the worst offenders, and they are certainly one of the worst offenders in Medway. Thank you.
Yeah, Ruth.
I'll just come in on the buses there, Councillor. So we do have a lot of work going on. As I said, Alex met with Arriva just last week because we are, obviously, one of the things we want to do is improve the public transport, and that includes getting a cleaner solution. I believe the Arriva buses are, it might not feel it when you're sat behind them, but I think they are pretty good in terms of the emissions. However, you know, there are lots of options out there that are coming online in terms of hydrogen and electric buses, and we've got a whole project team who are looking at all of that, because overall we do want to reduce emissions and get to net zero. And make Medway a much nicer place to breathe in clear air.
Did I see Councillor Bowen? Did you indicate? No, Councillor Field.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Thank you, officers, and thank you to members of the public and ward councillors who've contributed tonight. It's been a really interesting debate so far, and it's, I think, a very key issue for Medway. I certainly support the need for safer, healthier streets in Medway, and from what appears to be here, measures that are about making sure that the majority of drivers and road users are not penalised by those who commit stopping offences seems to be a sensible and proportional one. I'm actually quite interested in Councillor Etheridge's point there about actually, and glad to hear that officers are meeting with Arriva. Dare I say, I think we probably need a more interventionist approach to public transport in this area. I just want to get some feedback in terms of the alignment and how you think that this red route policy aligns to the local transport plan, and what you think the measures of success will be from this. And also, reading some of the feedback, we have plenty of positive responses from the general public when we're coming in the consultation. People saying, for instance, sadly, many drivers selfishly ignore current restrictions and increase the level of congestion and frustration. There is a need to encourage better behaviours by penalising the small number of badly behaved drivers to benefit us all. I think, it would be really good just to understand what we think that level of success will be, and actually how this fits in a wider, broader strategy in delivering the local transport plan and the future emerging local transport plan.
Sorry, my voice is so loud. It's gone off. Sorry. Thank you, Councillor. If I can mention the proposals, we'll support the council priorities and key objectives within Medway Council strategy, which are things around tackling congestion hotspots through transport and public rail improvements and making Medway a place where resident and businesses are proud of. In addition to that, it absolutely meets the key objectives of the local transport plan, where more efficient management of the highway network and car parks, together with the highway improvements that focus on congestion and air quality hotspots, thereby improving reliability and environmental impact of the transport network. In addition to that, improve travel safety by road safety interventions incorporating highway schemes such as these and education. Thank you.
Councillor Sands.
Thank you, Chair. As an ex-serviceman, I was once told there's no such thing as a stupid question, just a question asked by a stupid person, and I'll leave you to decide which it is. Firstly, I want to talk about blue badge holders, because it does say here we've got to move off promptly. And I'm not sure what promptly means and how long promptly is. I'm a blue badge holder, strangely enough, in Rainham today with my mother-in-law. She's 86 with more medical conditions than most hospitals. And it took her 22 minutes to get out of my car. Is that going to be taken in, or are we going to say you get 5 minutes and you've got to throw them out? That's a problem I have. It might be a minor problem, but it is a problem that I think blue badge holders will have. And the other question is, there is this groundswell of people in Rainham that don't want this red route. Is it beyond us to say we will just take Rainham out of this programme and then we've sorted that problem out? Is that a way forward? Thank you.
So I think on the final point, obviously we have a few options open to us through this meeting in terms of how the decision can be either sent back to Cabinet, referred to full council, but we're not at that stage of the meeting yet, but if you could perhaps pick up on the blue badge point.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got parents myself with blue badges, so I feel your pain. Very much like the what I was saying about funeral directors, you know, every time the shutter clicks, it is looked at by somebody who is human and will look at the situation. There's a blue badge and there's clearly an elderly or disabled person who needs a little bit more time. That will be taken into account. So we would be in a ridiculous situation, to be honest with you, if we look ahead and we put these in, and then we hit the headlines with we rush old person to get back into the car and they fall over or what have you. So rest assured, we have to say promptly because If we're talking a couple of hours, then there's a real problem there, isn't there? But it's not going to be, I know it can take 20 minutes, sometimes half an hour to get my own mum in a car, so I do get that. So rest assured.
Did I see... Oh, Councillor Hine.
Thank you, Chair. I was surprised to hear from Mr. Constantinidis that just 26 PCNs have been issued in the 6 months up to September. This is an extremely low figure, and it indicates the reliance that the Council has on our civil enforcement officers to witness such contraventions. My question is, how confident are officers that this red route system will be effective in capturing every vehicle found to stop on these routes? It might be useful if perhaps one of the officers could briefly outline to the committee how this system is set to work in practice. I also wonder whether we have perhaps researched how other local authorities have approached the issue of congestion by implementing red routes as well. And I know Mr. Liu said that it is not a matter of recouping the cost of this scheme just yet, as we haven't implemented it just yet. But I think consideration does need to be made about how successful the scheme will be in returning the funds to the council, particularly when you consider the significant costing of this scheme and the financial situation that we find ourselves in as an authority.
Okay, so I think a couple of those questions might go to our panel of experts in terms of the specifics of how the system works, and then perhaps you can pick up the other points after that.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. Really good question there, Councillor, about how effective the scheme will be, and I think Ruth outlined it really well about it will become a deterrent factor. And it's worked very well across the country, actually London mostly. We've only recently had the powers to put red routes outside London. If I can cite one area, and that's Luton Council, they have introduced red routes, and that's been extremely effective. And that also incorporated loading bays, and I think at the time the engagement they had was quite successful with the businesses, and it was like co-design, a bit like what we're doing with the businesses now. We've been out there, and we'll go out there again during the statutory process if that's agreed. You're absolutely right, it was a low figure, 26 PCNs, but as I said, it's a resource issue as well, and it's actually been there at the right time. So I hope I've covered the other authorities and how effective they've experienced red routes. There was another part, was there, Chair? Sorry.
Well, if I'm paraphrasing correctly, I think there was just a question on the sort of practicalities of the technology. You know, maybe someone could just talk us through the process. What happens? Car stops, image recorded. What is the procedure after that?
Hi, councillors. So the camera system that's proposed, it has been certified by the necessary bodies to enforce moving traffic offences. There's a number of systems out there on the market that have this certification, and these are the only ones that councils and enforcement bodies are allowed to use. It's an ANPR camera, so it captures it's been designed and set to capture the camera, the ANPR, the registration number of the vehicles, and we set them so that the field of view is appropriate for the space in which we want to enforce. So these have been implemented across the country. Alex mentioned London. There's lots of examples of where these cameras and our cameras in particular have been used in clean air zones, in low emission zones, yellow box junctions enforcement. These are all generally the same technology, the same camera systems that capture the evidence that again goes back to the officer that Ruth is mentioning, and then they do review. So the council set the business rules for the enforcement, so how it is to be enforced, and we provide the technology that allows them to do that, the evidence packs, and then that evidence is reviewed, and then the decision is made by an officer whether or not to proceed with a PCN, or to say that this is a disabled person unloading, or this is a funeral vehicle. So that's broadly speaking, high level, how the system works.
Yeah.
Sorry, if I could just add to that, there is an appeals process as well. So just like any kind of parking PCN that's given, there is an appeals process, which is a legislative process which we use at the moment anyway.
I should say as well, there is code of conduct as well for camera enforcement, and if anyone's read the new plan for drivers, there is a recognition that fair enforcement is generally what the driving public are looking for. So that sets out the broad high-level governmental approach to using camera enforcement as well as other tools for enforcement and congestion management.
Any other member? Councillor Bowen.
So I've just wanted to reply to that about the low level of enforcement. We've got 42% reporting dangerous or inconvenient parking on Rainham High Street, which is the highest number that was received in any of the areas. So it does look like it's just a matter of not being able to catch people rather than it's not actually occurring.
Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much. Chair, I just wanted to come back over the question of blue badges. The officer answered part of the question, or at least answered the question that the councillor opposite had asked, but that is only part of the issue. The other point about blue badges surely is that this scheme will act as a deterrent for illegal parking, which will make it easier for blue badge holders to get closer to where they wish to visit. So I think that is an important point, as well as the points which have already been mentioned. I was a little bit annoyed, actually, to hear Councillor Perfect accusing the Cabinet of being preemptive on the consultation. There are a whole lot of detailed points which have been made today by the local ward member and the member of the public who spoke at the meeting, which I would have thought could be addressed as part of the consultation. We are having a genuine consultation. Now, the Cabinet, I wasn't at the Cabinet meeting, the Cabinet may well have been responding to certain misrepresentations as to what the Red Route scheme was, or how it was being enforced, or use of the cameras, or what happens in London, or something else. But the fact of the matter is we are not, and I'd like the members of the public here today to be reassured, we are not preempting the consultation. And Councillor Perfect, of course, is the Conservative Group spokesperson on the Children and Young People Scrutiny Committee. I can remember cases earlier this century where schools were up for closure proposals. I can think of a couple of instances in particular where members of the public supported the school closure by 2 in one case and 3 in the other, and those that were against the school closure were in 4 figures, and yet the Conservative administration still went ahead and closed the schools. So I'm afraid, Chair, I'm not going to take lessons from the Conservative group in preemptive consultations. I would like to ask one more question, and that is whether the officers have given any thought, it's an open question really, whether the officers have given any thought to the question, to the issue of a dispensation scheme, whether a dispensation scheme would be something that would be considered.
Sorry, Councillor Jones, dispensation in regards to what other criteria additional to the ones that have been set out already? Or?
Yeah, well, you might, for example, say that you've got a particular delivery on a particular day and you needed dispensation for that. I'm sorry if I didn't express it clearly.
Understood.
Yeah, there is potential options around that in terms of looking at the idea around you could book a space and then get that delivery. The point of the feedback we've got is we've certainly looked at where the loading bays we feel should be placed in order to best serve the people that we've spoken to and the businesses we've spoken to. So, you know, the allocation has been very much around where they haven't got rear access at the moment, or they haven't got anywhere in order to do that. We've also picked places where, you know, we're looking at putting the loading bay near to the nationwide bank that's there, because we know that there's people that use that element of it, and we've still got the space to enable vehicles to still go round. So I think in the first instance, very much we've looked to cover that already and provide that facility. So in this instance, I don't think it's needed in terms of dispensations as part of it. But going forward, it could be something that's looked at in terms of the times of the loading bays and what else can be done to help and support in the high street.
Okay, so Councillor Nestorov.
Thank you, Chair. I have a few points to make. It's more of a point than a question. I understand local businesses' concern about parking and about the effect that red routes could have. During the consultation, some local businesses expressed concern about parking. Within the 1 kilometer proposed stretch of the red routes, there will still be 2 existing parking bays, as well as the creation of 3 additional loading bays, which have been added to the design following the first informal consultation. Me personally, as a delivery business owner, operate more than 20 vehicles that travel around Kent. And I can confidently say that the provision of parking bays actually helps a lot with the delivery and helps a lot the drivers. Having a designated place to stop is very helpful and will help reduce congestions, as the drivers won't be driving around looking for a place to stop. Keep in mind that most delivery drivers will not risk parking on double yellow lines and have a fine, especially if you have 50 or 60 deliveries a day. If you get 10 fines per day, it's just not a viable option to do the job. It's also important to note that there will be a number of car parks in the area for residents to use and to park without endangering others or causing delays. The introduction of red routes around the country have shown that it makes bus journeys more reliable and faster. If you can rely that your bus will be on time, why not pop to the store instead of waiting for it? Having the confidence of accurate bus timing will enable shoppers to spend more time in stores instead of waiting for the bus at the stop. And lastly, having a well-organized roads will stop inconsiderate motorists from parking on the pavements. The theory of broken windows teaches us that antisocial behavior and civil disorder creates an urban environment that encourages further antisocial behavior and disorder. Stopping illegal parking will make Rainham High Street safer and more present for all our residents. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Just that's an interesting point about the pavement parking, because I was in Liverpool last week for the Labour Party conference and spoke to the Guide Dogs Association, and that is one of their campaigns. So I just wonder, I mean, that would obviously be something that was considered in the Equalities Impact statement, but I suppose not specifically with regard to red routes, but might perhaps a knock-on effect.
Yes, definitely. If somebody, even with a double yellow line now, if somebody actually goes onto the pavement, or fully or partially, then they're still liable for a fine. Absolutely. And as you said, in terms of people with guide dogs, people who've got some sort of physical disability, so they're in a wheelchair or prams, it is a problem for people. And also. One of the key things is we do want to encourage people to walk more, to use active travel, to use the shops, children to walk to school safely. The last thing you want is a car pulling up and, and a child or anybody being in danger because a car's pulled up because they want to pop in a shop. So it's really, all of this is about managing our network better, giving people places to park, but also ensuring that the indiscriminate parking doesn't happen. And that helps with road safety as well as congestion.
Thank you. Councillor Peake.
I found it very interesting, the reasons why you've called this back on, and it all seems to be about the A2 Rainham Way and about concerns about businesses. Now, when I managed and owned my own business, it was a shop. I used to have articulated lorries have to come along and supply my shop. The very fact that I had a bay parking was a big plus factor. But also, on the junction where I had my shop, if there was traffic, I know the fact that customers would just drive away and would not give me their custom. People can be very fickle. So I understand the concerns, but you've had the answers. There's already yellow lines. You know about dispensation that can be applied for. So I'm going to look at another issue which I think should be addressed. And it concerns me that this hasn't really been spoken about this evening. Across the parties, surely we all have a concern about the impact on the environment. And study after study has shown that the warming of the planet is caused by overheating. The emissions from vehicles is a significant contributor to that. And in the report, it makes it quite clear that the red routes are moving traffic enforcement, this is 3.2, sorry, on page 23, Enforcement will support the council priorities and contribute to the key priorities. And this includes the recognition of the need of having air quality and therefore the Medway Air Quality Action Plan. So the environment matters, and this is us as a council being responsible, being reactive to that. There's no point giving lip service, oh, we care about these things, if you don't actually take action. And this is part of that action. The environment does matter, and here's a chance to do something about it. And he makes it quite clear on page 23, 3.4, that by reducing slow-moving, stop-start and idling traffic, a key contributor to poor air quality, slow-moving vehicles during congestion periods give rise to high proportion of emissions. So this does matter, and I don't want the whole issue about environment just to pass by in this debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hubbard?
Thank you. Scarfing. Let's look back at where this has come from. So this has been called in by Councillor Filmer on behalf of the Conservative group, because he's the spokes of this there on this committee. But prior to him being the spokesperson for them, he was, of course, a member of the Cabinet. So Councillor Filmer was his responsibility for frontline services. And that included highways, of course. And as part of that role, he would have had many conversations about the red routes and how they're going to come forward with the Deputy Director and other members of her staff. So I've known Phil. Phil, I've known you since '91. I've never known you to be dishonest. But maybe this is undoubtedly the first time, maybe. Because you've come along as a group saying, oh, we didn't know. But let's be clear about it. The proposals for the red lines did not come out of the blue. They came from the members of the Blue Party opposite. That's where it came from. It came a long time ago. So if we want to go back and delve into a bit of history. So, as I said, members opposite, and you got Councillor Filmer and you got Councillor Hatwell up there, were members of the Cabinet, and collective responsibility of the Cabinet means that they were party and agreed to the decisions of the Cabinet. So one of those decisions, of course, was to bring forward the proposals for red lines. In fact, they voted for it 3 times, if you're a member of the Cabinet. And if you weren't a member of the Cabinet, and that's Councillor Etheridge and Councillor Barrett, you only voted for it twice. And the innocents, of course, are Councillor Perfect and Councillor Hine, who, of course, weren't here. So I can't blame them for bringing this nonsense tonight. So let's look at the background. So the paper that went to full council on the 20th of April this year, so it's not long ago, you've got a good memory, and 2.1 of that states, in October 22, the Cabinet agreed to support civil enforcement of moving traffic offences across Medway. That was the decision of Cabinet. They agreed to that, and the Council agreed to it. And in February, this is the budget meeting, the Cabinet and the Council agreed, but actually, technically, members of the Labour group didn't agree at full Council because we voted against the budget. Agreed that there should be an item put into the budget that is specifically, and here it states, the introduction of enforcement of red routes, increased income net of the cost of implementation. So in other words, the Conservatives were proposing the red routes and saw it as an income stream. That's what was being proposed by Councillor Filmer, Councillor Hatwell, and others on the back benches of the Tory administration at the time. So they are not innocent opposite. They are guilty of the very things they're trying to blame the Labour group of. Just to state again, the proposals for the red lines did not come out of the blue. They came from members of the Blue Party opposite. End of.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. You'll forgive me, Councillor Filmer. I indulged some points that perhaps you want to personally clarify because I knew you were up next.
I have no problem answering those questions. Yes, I knew about red routes. They were put into Star Chamber and they were put in there for consideration for the budget, but it was always known that red routes would have to go out to consultation. Now, the reason we've called this in is purely, now I haven't got any problem with moving traffic, and I had lots of people on to me about school streets, totally 100% behind that. We need to do something on that. But the reason we asked for the red routes to come in, because of the local opposition listening to what the people say about this. Now, tonight we've heard from the local councillor, Councillor Hackwell, and Mr. Stockey, who put very, very good cases through regarding what the residents would like to see in Rainham and the reasons behind why we shouldn't implement this red route in Rainham. I haven't got a problem with red routes in other areas because the opposition to them there wasn't such like it was in Rainham, and perhaps we should run them as a pilot to see how it works. But from what I've heard tonight, what concerns me is now Lucas, the furniture guy, he's going to have a loading bay. If we don't watch out and we go to all these different companies there, we will end up with so many restrictions that when we hear there's only 26 tickets being issued, if you was working out a business case on this, you certainly wouldn't be investing £800,000 doing a red route. So I have to question whether or not we are looking at this from a viable point of view, but I'm totally behind all the work that we want to carry out to make the roads safe around our schools, and I would not put myself in the way of that. But yes, answering your question, that's why it was put forward. Now, we never implemented red routes, lest it wouldn't be going out to consultation. So the Conservatives didn't implement this. We did put it up for consideration regarding the budget.
I just think it is definitely worth clarifying that you say that it was put forward, but at the budget, but that's of no significance. But I mean, my understanding, and do jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, that the calculations that were being done on the budget, which was passed earlier this year by the previous administration, were banking on this particular measure bringing in £233,000 to the revenue budget. Now, we've all read the stories in the press about the £17 million black hole in the budget, but that looks very much like predetermination to me. I mean, obviously subject to consultation, but it looks like the previous administration were literally banking on this going ahead. I mean, and if it doesn't go ahead, does that mean that it's £17.23 million black hole in the budget? I'm slightly confused. Maybe you can illuminate.
Yeah, more than happy. I mean, I'm pleased to hear you on about the £17 million story. Now, where you've been told about £17 million, we've had this every year on the Cabinet, this deficit that we've got to find the money every year. Obviously, the figures were given to the Cabinet, what this would possibly produce, providing it went out to consultation and it was agreed. So those figures couldn't be enshrined in a budget. They were only there regarding whether or not it went out to consultation. You've got the street works, you've got to go through all that to make sure you get it all done. So it was never a guaranteed sum, but we were given the figure that was in the budget.
Sure, but nonetheless, that sum was the estimate being given, and therefore the calculation of the £17 million gap between the plan and the reality does include that 233,000 figure.
when we did the budget in April, it was a balanced budget, so there wasn't 17 million, was there? And we also put money in for free parking on a Monday and to do the Christmas lights.
I mean, again, though, I just think that all you're highlighting is that the sums don't actually add up, do they? So I'm not intending this to become a cross-examination, and I understand that it's that wasn't necessarily your idea, but you know, as Councillor Hubbard says, that there is collective cabinet responsibility for those decisions. But yeah, I think we've probably said enough on that. Any other member? In which case, I think we move to Vice Chair. Do you have a proposal, Vice Chair?
The committee is asked to consider the called-in cabinet decision number 144/2023, and decide either to, firstly, accept the cabinet decision and therefore take no further action, or secondly, refer the decision back to cabinet for reconsideration, setting out the processes for referral back, or to refer the decision to full council for consideration.
And I'm taking the temperature myself, but do you have a proposal, Councillor Field?
I propose that firstly we vote on whether we accept the cabinet decision and therefore take no further action.
Is that seconded? Oh, Councillor Fillmore?
Yeah, we'd like to move that it goes to full council.
Okay, well, we'll take the first proposal, and was that seconded? And shall we take the vote now? How are we recording this? Are we, Nicola? Are we? Okay. So is that agreed? Those in favour? Yes. Those against? So that proposal has been carried. I think that the other proposal therefore falls. And with that, that concludes tonight's meeting. Thanks very much to everyone for their contributions. Thank you to Mr. Stockey for his contribution. And I think absolutely clear from officers tonight that this is not the end of the process. I've been reassured that this is an ongoing process, that there have been adjustments since the proposal which went to Cabinet. I would fully expect the proposal which goes out to formal consultation to be further adapted based on contributions tonight. So thank you very much, everyone. Good night.